going to have a couple of seconds here for the video to kick in. And just once again, thank you to everybody for being here at our Candidates Forum on Historic Resources. We have 2 candidates for City Council and 2 candidates for the County Board of Supervisors with us tonight. We will be running through a sequence of approximately 10 questions, and this is not a debate. It's just to hear different perspectives on some topics that the community has had an interest in and would really like to hear from the candidates tonight about. So thank you all for being here. We will start off with a first introductory question with George Turnbull, who is running for the District 2 seat for the County Board of Supervisors. And the question again, can you tell us about a place within the city or district where you are running for office that has special meaning for you because of its history? Where is this place and why is it important to you? Go ahead, George.
Well, the biggest thing is my shop in El Dorado. It used to be called the Nevada Hotel, and that was a true Pony Express stop then. Anyway, and also I'm sitting right here at the El Dorado Community Church, the oldest active church in El Dorado County. The only older church is the one in Coloma within a few months. This church was built in 1853, all right? It was called the Union Church. And then in 1857, it became the El Dorado Community Church. My great-great-grandfather brought the bell up for this church from San Francisco. So this church actually burned down twice, and they've restored it. The pews that are here in the church right now was built by El Dorado High School. And at that time, my Uncle Warren was the one that built these pews when he was in high school in El Dorado. So there's a lot of history here, even in this little town of El Dorado. And I want to make sure that we keep our history, because once a history is gone, it's gone. And this building is like I say, the oldest active church in El Dorado County. And I would like to restore the church. When elected, I would look into restoring the church in Coloma, because I think we can get a lot of contractors and stuff that donate their time. And I bet we could get a lot of lumber and stuff donated from either Home Depot or Lowe's or even the mill here in El Dorado. So I want to preserve the history, and I care about the history. I've always been kind of a history buff, but when you're talking 8 generations in El Dorado County, our family has, there's a lot of deep roots here. And I want to make sure that the history stays in our county.
Thank you so much, George. Next on this question, we will hear from John Heidel, a candidate for the District 1 County Supervisor seat. Go ahead, John.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts on this. There's 2 categories I guess I want to address. The first is our historical cemeteries. I am on the El Dorado County Cemetery Advisory Committee. I'm a representative for the Board of Supervisors, so I've gotten to know a lot about our cemeteries across the county. But there's multiple cemetery sites within District 1 that are very important. The Mormon Island Cemetery and all of its great history. The Highway 50, Lincoln Highway cemeteries that are out in the Clarksville area. Again, very, very historic thoughts or parks and areas. And they need to be recognized and brought to a point where they can be a public display of that great history in those days. And then there's cemeteries that are historic cemeteries off of Green Valley Road. So cemeteries is the first category because I think there's a lot of great history and there's a lot of people looking for ancestry these days, and it's easily obtained now by going online through the websites. And I think it's something we need to make more available to the public to be able to visit those sites where either their ancestors were buried or some other friend or some relationship that really lets them understand the rich history that we have in El Dorado County. The second category is Bass Lake. Bass Lake in and of itself is a great history story from the standpoint, it at one time was created for doing mining as a storage for water and distributing it to mining operations and stuff. It later became a recreational facility. John Thompson, a resident of El Dorado Hills, wrote a great book, if you haven't read it, about the history of Bass Lake and its evolution from the early days to today. There now is a regional park that's proposed by our El Dorado Hills Community Services District surrounding Bass Lake. And I would hope the History Society or somebody would take up the initiative to make sure that there's representation of that great history of what Bass Lake provided us over the years as part of that park theme. So I would encourage you to get involved with that and to share your ideas on it. But I know it's one of the things that's on my list to make sure the CSD is aware of, and we do something to commemorate that.
Thank you so much.
Can I say something just a minute for John, you know? John, I know you were talking about the cemeteries and stuff, and
Yeah.
you know, it's a great thing because I'm the president of Frenchtown Cemetery Association. Our cemetery was, you know, it was bought for $10 in gold in 1908. And that cemetery has been cleaned by our family for decades. And if the other cemeteries could follow our association and what we put together, we can make these cemeteries, because we clean our own, but they could do the same thing. And I think it would be a great thing to preserve the cemeteries. Thanks, Don.
I totally appreciate the comment. We're gonna try to stick to our format because we want to just stay able to hear the responses to the question. There is going to be, I should have said this at the beginning, there will be an opportunity for closing comments at the end. Everyone will be able to, you know, summarize their thoughts and reflections from this forum, and I think there will be a lot of things that come out of this. But thank you again, and no worries. I just wanted to say I think we need to stick to our format and run through that, and then we will have time at the end for closing comments. And so with that, we'll move to our next speaker, Mandy Rodriguez, candidate for City of Placerville City Council.
Hi, everyone.
Go ahead, Mandy.
Okay. Well, these guys really have some deep-rooted history, that especially George, so it's kind of hard to top that story. But I had a shop on Main Street, and it was called Soul Bunny Silversmith, and it was next to Empire Antiques. And one of the neat things, so first I would say that downtown is really, that's my favorite part, if I had to pick. And what was so cool about having a shop was the people that would come in and the stories that they would tell. And one of my favorite stories, because Empire Antiques, we all know, used to be the movie theater. This couple comes in and they, oh yeah, you know, we grew up here, and I remember when I was little, we lived up on Spring Street, and right before Christmas, or right before Thanksgiving, the movie theater would give away a turkey to families that would come in and go to the movie theaters. And so this guy tells me this whole story, how when he was little, his mom, you know, made him carry this turkey all the way back home, all the way up Spring Street. And he was super embarrassed that he had to carry this turkey. And then they go on to say that him and his wife went on dates to the movie theater. And so when you have a shop on Main Street, you get the privilege to hear those kinds of stories from people. So even though I didn't, you know, I'm not from here, I've lived in El Dorado County for 25 years. When you're on Main Street and you have a shop, you really get to hear those personal stories, and it's just really neat, and it makes you feel a part of it. So.
Thank you so much, Mandy.
Yeah.
Right, and now we'll move on to Tracy Bunch. Do you need me to repeat the question?
Ms. Jennifer, you know I would love to hear that question again. Thank you.
Absolutely. The question is, can you tell us about a place within the city or district where you are running for office that has special meaning for you because of its history?
Wow.
Where is it, and why is it important to you?
All right, I got a unique answer. It's mostly like it's the people. You know, I'm connected through the people. I think I work with the most prized possession that we have in El Dorado, and that's the children. You know, been raising the children for like 15 years. So the stories from the families to the children is like I'm deep rooted in everything that pretty much has went on over the last 15 years and in the past. One of the things that hold dear to me is Town Hall. Town Hall is a special place where I can kind of feel the spirit of the city. You know, where the Druid is, and old Hangtown Creek. That part over there shows what the community was all about, which is something I stand for. It is gave me a vessel to work with the children, as far as like, you know, I'm a basketball coach. You know, I get to teach all kind of values and things like that. You know, the parents sit back and they are just always real respectful and real happy that I can take time out of my day and volunteer to go in and, like I said, as young as 6 years old, the first time they ever touch a basketball, girls and guys, you know, all the way up to they like, you know, I work with kids that are like 34, 35 years old. I've always been there, always been helpful. And so like coming from Mississippi, I bring a lot of, you know, of my grandparents' values. You know, they believe in a lot of history where I'm from. And we always been able to preserve it. And so one thing that I would always do for the city to my dying day, because my children are born here now and my roots are here, I will always preserve and protect each building like it's my own, because I've heard these stories and I know how the legacy goes in El Dorado County, which is, like I said, sitting back from Mississippi, watching the gold rush, the biggest migration in history, you know, and Lil Tracy gets to come out here and actually have a chance to use his voice and his work ethic to protect these things. So I'm just blessed to sit around with all the candidates and hear the conversation and things like that. And I'm just here to unite, bring everybody together from each side to make sure that we understand we're in this all together. Just like in the past, when the gold rush was happening, people had to depend on each other. And it was like the little small United Nations, you know, from black to white to Italians to everybody. And they made sure that everybody got along with respect because they worked hard. And that's the same thing I come from. So I have no problem doing the job. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Tracy. That was a great introduction. And our next question will give you an opportunity to share some more, you know, personal thoughts on historic resources. The next question is, are there any historic resources in the city or county that you feel need to be protected? What are these resources and what steps would you take to protect them? And so now we'll start with our next alphabetical name, John Heidel.
Okay, yeah, the ones that stand out to me, and I'm going to address the ones at the county level because I think the city representatives are a lot closer to that. But at the county level, Marshall Gold Discovery State Park has got to be number one. I mean, the number of school kids that go to that park and learn our history of the gold discovery and all those, it's just a tremendous asset. It's a state resource, but in the past, we've had threats that the state wanted to shut it down. And we have to make sure that that state park stays open. So from a county level, I will do everything I can to fight and convince the state that that state park is a jewel. It needs to stay open. It needs to be available to our kids and the general tourists. So that's number one on my list. The second one I think we need to make sure we recognize is the Pony Express Trail. That's also a great part of our history. George mentioned that with the Pony Express stops. We need to find a way to preserve that history and to memorialize it, to make it more visible to people who come and visit. I know there's monuments and that sort of thing, but somehow we need to do a little bit more promotion, I think, in terms of having people recognize what it was like to live in California in the mid-1800s, you know, with all of the lack of resources they had. And it was brute strength and endurance that made things happen. The third and final one I'll mention that's near and dear to my heart is the Snowshoe Thompson Memorial up at South Lake Tahoe. I've taken my grandkids up there, read that memorial information to them, talked about what it must have been like to wear his snow skis, right? And to weather the horrible snowfall and the wind blasts and everything else to make sure that, you know, the mail system got through. I mean, what an incredible story that is of resiliency and how strong our history is in El Dorado County. So those are the three that come to mind in my mind from the standpoint of the county needs to make sure that we preserve those historic representations.
Thank you, John. Next, we'll hear from Mandy Rodriguez, City Council candidate for the city of Placerville.
Oh gosh, there's so much. So many things that I think that we should be focusing on. And as far as the buildings downtown, you know, when the jewelry store got purchased, a lot of it just got gutted. And I'm not sure about the new owners, but as somebody who's a silversmith, I used to walk by there and think, oh man, if I had a big chunk of cash, I would buy that. And to see just a little teeny tiny plaque, but that's all there was, it would be really nice to hear more of the history of that. So I think that's something that downtown is lacking as far as all the buildings go. One, maybe resources for new owners or people that are going to purchase it, and resources for them to maybe restore it and instead of just completely gutting it. Of course, we have the county courthouse, and that's a big deal. I'd like to see it still functioning somewhat as a courthouse, maybe, you know, partially. I think we could keep it open, and it's really important to the businesses downtown, especially the restaurants. Even myself, when I had my shop down there, a lot of those people that came for jury duty came into my shop and spent money and then came back for the weekend with their family. So I think it's important that we really focus on preserving as much as of downtown as we can, and making the history of downtown more accessible to people so they understand. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mandy. Tracy Bunch, next we'll hear from you, City Council candidate. Again, are there any historic resources in the city or county that you feel need to be protected? And what are these resources, and what steps would you take to protect them?
Right, you know, just a moment to give I wish my grandma could see me now. Oh my God, she'd be so proud of me. But you know, for me, I'm a country boy from Mississippi. So, you know, I grew up beside the creeks and things like that. And so one of the things I think we don't take advantage of, and it's real simple, the Hangtown Creek is the stories I hear from the kids when they were young about the frogs that they would like catch, and, you know, the crawfish, and meet their best friend at the creek. You know, I mean, it was real wholesome. And, you know, with the creek, like things like that, I think it needs to be sometimes I'm over at the town hall, and sometimes we have to do picture taking, and sometimes the families hang out. And, you know, I'd be thinking like if the creek was just like restored, you know what I mean, just taken care of, you know, it would add such beauty to the city. And at the same time, you know, as far as like I say, you know, the clay bridge that's sitting right there too, it just adds like an accent to it. And so for me, like I said, the resource would be easy. Like I say, I'm a volunteer. I've been volunteering since day one. It ain't about the money. It's about the pride that we take in our city. And so, you know, people, that's inspiration. And so I always learned that trick from Tom Sawyer. You know, I started doing it, and then if your friend see you doing it, he wants to join. And so therefore, I've been very good at volunteering. I make all that look easy and fun. You know what I mean? So we get together as a community, and we go clean up the weeds, and we make sure we, like, you know, straighten everything out around that area, just as a project, as an event. You know what I mean? It's a lot of people that want to know what to do and how to do. And so I've mastered volunteer work, you know, at the same time, even micro volunteering. Even if it's something real small, I can bring a couple people in for a couple of minutes just to make sure it's done. So I really give a lot of admiration to Mr. George when he was saying that his family keeps up the graveyards and things like that. That's what my family used to do back home, George. And so it takes a lot of pride to do. And so that would be one of the things, the resources, and that's one of the things that I think I would take heart in preparing, is the Hangtown Creek. Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, well, and next we'll hear from George Turnbull regarding historic resources that need to be protected. What are they, and what steps would you take?
Well, one thing is, like I talked about, the old church in Coloma. I think that's a great thing that we need to do to restore that church. And I think we can get a lot of resources, you know, outside the area. And I think a lot of people could donate their own time and stuff to maybe, you know, get that active again, because I think it's a great thing. I don't want it to see it deteriorate and eventually be tore down. So that's a big thing. We need to also preserve Gold Bug Mine. I think that's a great historical site, and it's a lot of people visit that every day. A lot of tourists come to our little town. One of the biggest things too is the courthouse. Now, my grandfather worked on that courthouse when he was just a teenager at that time. And I've got pictures of him doing that, pouring the sidewalk that's up there, the steps and stuff to the courthouse. So there's a lot of history there. Another thing I want to preserve is the cemetery where the Dixon Ranch area is, where the housing development's going in there. There's been some push to do away with that cemetery there. And there's one living heir that's left. And I don't want to see the graves being tore up or whatever it takes to put more buildings on that particular site. That's wrong. So we need to preserve these old cemeteries because it's very crucial, like John was talking about. But if you do it the right way, like our association was formed in 1908, can you imagine? 1908. And it was even written by an attorney at that time. And we have bylaws and everything goes with it. And if these other historic cemeteries could follow the plan that we put together, it would help them preserve the history and those cemeteries and make sure they get cleaned up without spending any money at all, when they wanted to bring money in to be able to clean these cemeteries up. So I cared about the history of this county. It's like my service station. It's like the church in El Dorado. We can go on and on and on about all these buildings, because once they're gone, that's it. There's no more history left. And I don't want to see roundabouts like they tried to put one in El Dorado. I fought on that one. They didn't put it. They were talking about tearing poor Reds down. Could you just imagine that at that time? To put a roundabout there in El Dorado? It's wrong. So I don't know who does the planning, but man, I tell you, you got to preserve the historic, because here's the thing, like Diamond Springs, they want to put a roundabout in there. That's going to destroy the character of that little town if they do that. And I think that's, we got to look at ways to prevent that kind of stuff from happening, because these old buildings and stuff like the Diamond Hotel, you're talking about in El Dorado, the old miner store that's down on the left-hand side across from Bobby's. And then you're talking about the grocery, El Dorado grocery and stuff. That's a historic site too, because the Masons own that particular site. So, and you're talking about our railroad. I want to preserve the old railroad that we have. You got to understand, the old Hill Hotel that used to be there, it was called the Oriental Hotel before that, it burnt down. But a lot of famous people stayed at that hotel, came from San Francisco, rode the train all the way up here to Placerville and stayed at that hotel, because El Dorado one time was going to be it was recommended to be the county seat. There was a lot of people here at one time. You're talking about over 160,000 people were here in the town of El Dorado. And there was a town just outside of El Dorado called Uniontown is what it was. And that's where all the
George,
miners were here in the 1800s.
Thank you. We're going to try to stick to our time frame as well, but it's great to hear the passion, and there is just so much. I know there's not enough time to talk about all the things we need to protect in this county.